Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another quick game of interplanetary ice spy going on here. Back to Mars, back to Gale Crater, back to Sol 395 as we have here. Now, I've been going through all the older images of Gale Crater, some of them going right back to the early first year or two, and basically I think a lot of these are better than the ones we get now. Largely now what we get are black and white images, and they're pretty poor. A lot of these earlier images are actually quite good, and I think you're more likely to find stuff in these because basically they're brighter and they're better quality. They seem to have degraded over the years. Of course, the rover has been on Mars a long time now, since 2012, so that's quite a long time. And also, I really think they're downgrading the images a lot more now than they used to, which means they look really fuzzy. As soon as you zoom in, they just turn to crap. But some of these older ones, not bad, right? So, as you may have gathered from the cover, today we're going to be looking at this thing here, right there. There we are. What more can I say? I was really quite pleased with this find, and it goes further to confirm my theory that this part of Mars, at least, was inhabited by apes of many different types. Some look a bit like chimpanzees, some look a bit like gorillas, some look like something in between, some look like small kind of monkeys, and some look like baboons and that kind of thing. Now this, I couldn't tell you what sort of species this is because it doesn't really conform to any we have here on Earth. Let me just point out some details for you. You've got the eyes here. Now this is pretty unclear, the eyes, this part. Okay, because it's in shadow. You can see they're there. If I zoom in, I see one here actually. And this one's all kind of wrinkled up. And you've got these squiggly lines here, which is, this looks mummified, but when you look at it, the details to me say mummified. You've got a nose here, two clear nostrils, symmetrical nostrils. That doesn't happen in nature. You don't get rocks with symmetrical features like that. When you get holes in rocks, they're never symmetrical. And there's the nose, obviously. You can see that real clear, the snout. There's the mouth down here. You've got upper lip detail here. And what looks a bit like teeth detail here. It's a bit unclear, but there seem to be parts sticking down here, like teeth. Okay. Rather strange. Very small chin. The eyes, like I said, aren't very clear, but you've got one ear sticking out this side. And we've got another ear here. Just there. Could this be a kind of hybrid species? Or did they just evolve differently on Mars? They probably did. The thing is, we can only compare these things to what we have on Earth. This is why I always pick things that I can recognise and that you may be able to recognise. Otherwise, we will just be piddling in the wind, as it were, because basically you can't compare things to things you've never seen before. In other words, you have to have a reference point, i.e. the creatures and objects and buildings and boats and ships and everything else that we have on Earth. As I've shown in many videos on Mars, we have all these things on Mars, but you can only compare them to things that you've seen on Earth, or that we have on Earth, and have reference to. You cannot compare things that have never been seen before, because that would just be wild speculation. But what's rather odd about this is that the way that it's kind of broken off. Now, if this was an actual mummified head, I would expect there to be a kind of more sort of natural looking cut here, or break in the neck. But it almost looks as if it's been sliced off and it's kind of turned to stone. Mineralized and turned to stone. Now, of course, I've done many videos on how I think the preservation works on Mars, and that because of the very sulfurous, muddy soil and sand, which sticks to everything. and it would act as a preservative, but it doesn't explain why it's got a very similar texture to the rock behind it. Now, this must be fossilized. For it to have these ridges, you've got these ridges going through it, like we have in the rock behind, you can just about make them out. If I zoom in a bit, you can see these ridges, right? Can you see them there? It looks, now some of that is down to pixelation, of course, but they're not straight across, they're coming round. And if you look on the rock behind, we've got the similar patterns in the rock behind, so it's very odd. So is this a statue that's broken and the head just placed there, or there could be a whole body underneath it, or is this a mummified head? Now, that's the question. It's hard to say. I would say this is actually mummified, because if you were to carve a person or a monkey or a gorilla or an ape or whatever this is some kind of gorilla type ape or something. If you were to carve one, you wouldn't actually carve mummified detail into it like we have here with the eyes, all kind of scrunched up and wrinkled like that. You wouldn't do that. You would carve eyes that were open and normal looking. So this says to me mummified. And what I think's happened here, as with a lot of the researchers are now hinting on, a lot of Mars researchers are now saying that a lot of these things we're finding have been textured. In other words, NASA are using a rock texture on some of the finds that aren't rocks to make them blend in. Now, I can't prove that, but it is highly possible and would probably be very easy to do, because we have plenty of rocks in the area where you can actually sample the textures from and then overlay a texture over these finds to make them look like the rocks that they are next to or near to. That is highly possible. I'm not going to rule that out, because it's really odd. Let's have a look at the overall image and I'll show you what I mean. Now, this is a really cool image. I made a little Gigapan here of about 7 or 8 images. We've got Mount Sharp up here in the background, but you can't really see a lot of detail there because it's a long way off and we're not zoomed into it. Here's the boat that I found, or the ship that I found years ago, just here. This is the one with the number plate on the front. In fact, you can just about make out the numbers, 2, 9, whatever. It's got numbers on the front. There it is, there's the front of the boat. It's a bit vague. I haven't enhanced this in any way. This is raw. These have just been stitched together. And you've got the ridge line here with the rocks on it, and some of these rocks are really odd. And here it is, we've got a group of rocks here, and there is the little gorilla, just here. Now, other gorillas have been found on Mars. I didn't find the gorilla on Mars. I have done a video on it, and I've also found what look like chimpanzees, baboon type apes, and much smaller apes like monkeys and stuff, and even an orangutan. Now, a lot of them look like carvings, but I actually think they're mummified into the rock and were preserved when the atmosphere was probably destroyed a very long time ago. And basically, if you were to basically die on the surface of Mars, like I think a lot of these have, in this what once used to be an oasis, NASA have recently come out and said this area was an oasis. I came up with that theory years ago when I first started doing videos in early 2013. So I actually was the first to call this area an oasis. And now NASA are coming round to the idea. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, so there it is. I mean, even in the raw image, you can see the ear, you can see the eye, you can see the other eye just about there. If you zoom in, you can see the eye there. You can see the snout quite clearly, and the mouth with what look like sort of lip and teeth detail just there, and a very small chin, but of course it may be partly buried. So there we are. That's it in context. Now, how big is it? Don't know. I would say it's quite large. It's at the back of the image. It's in good visual range. Now, the rover isn't just here. The rover's further back and it's zoomed in, okay, as always. So we're not right next to this thing. But a lot of these so-called rocks do actually look like skulls when you zoom into them. But a lot of them probably aren't. They're probably just rocks that look a bit like skulls. But the problem is you have skulls and carvings all in the same area, as I've shown before, sometimes next to each other. And some of the carvings look very rock-like, and some of the rocks look very carving-like. So it's a bit of a minefield, really, visually. And it's quite difficult to discern sometimes what is what. And you have a potential rock here, it's got a row of teeth. You can see those teeth there. So that's not a rock, but probably a skull. But the problem is, half of it's missing. This part of the skull is completely sheared off. So that's teeth there. It's a row of teeth. You can see them clearly in the raw image there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll take a clip of that and do an enhancement in a minute. So a lot of these are fossils that are broken, or skulls that have just been lying there and were probably covered in mud or silt, probably for thousands or millions of years, and a lot of them broken and eroded and wind eroded and even water eroded, some of them. So a lot of them are misshapen and broken. But this one over here, as we zoom in over here, is intact. Mainly probably because it's protected by these larger rocks behind it, which have protected it from wind erosion largely. And there's another one here. If you go over to the left, just here, there's another one here. It's there. Now, it doesn't look much like a skull or a head initially, but when you look at it more carefully, you can see an eye here, a nose here, and a mouth here. But this is heavily damaged. This is what most of them look like. Why? Because it's more exposed. It's sticking up. It doesn't have a load of big rocks next to it or behind it like this one does over here to protect it. So it's more eroded. And I find this with a lot of the specimens, like skulls and things I found, and objects even. The ones that are more exposed tend to be in much worse shape, where the wind's eroded them and they've dilapidated and broken and parts have fallen off and things like that. So this goes for objects as well as skulls and statues and stuff. So I will take a clip of that and see if I can get some detail out of it. There is some detail here, but it's a bit broken up. But you've got 2 eye sockets there. That's usually a giveaway, and a nose, and what looks like a mouth here. So is it? Yes, maybe. That's a maybe, but if it is, it's badly damaged and not very clear. But this one, even without doing anything to the image, this is completely raw. You can see it pretty clearly. Now, obviously, this is the raw clip here, which you've just seen. I just took a straight clip of that, and this has obviously been enhanced, but I haven't enhanced it very much. I've just really brightened it up and given it a colour filter, which makes it go more blue. I'm not sure if it would be this blue, but who knows? We don't really know with NASA, do we? Because they colour filter everything, they distort everything, they downgrade everything, especially when it comes to these Mars surface images. They do put the full images on their main PDS site, but they're very difficult to get hold of, and they often hold on to them for 6 months or years even before they put them on there, and they're very difficult to convert and download. I'm just going to sharpen this right up for you to show you that these things are actually there. We've got the wrinkly eye there. Let's go in quite hard with that. I have to exaggerate this a bit because obviously this is YouTube, and not everyone has their brightness settings right up, so I'm just trying to make this clearer for you. There's the nose, make it really sharp, just to exaggerate. There's the top lip there, tooth detail, interesting stuff down there. There's the ear, and what looks like an earring, or something maybe depicting an earring, I don't know. Now, does the ear come right round like this? I'm not sure. I think that's the main part of the ear, that bit there. But there's something below it there, like an earring. Now, I have found on other skulls earrings. So, apes wearing earrings? Perhaps they're not just apes. These are probably sort of proto-humanoid type apes. In other words, they may have spoke, they may have been highly intelligent. Is it possible that not only there was a nuclear war on Mars, but is it possible that the people on Mars were wiped out in a massive explosion or series of explosions, probably from a meteor or maybe Olympus Mons and the nuclear war, who knows? They may have had all three. Not all at once, of course. But is it possible that the humanoids on Mars, or people I should say, could have been wiped out with a biological weapon? Is it possible someone could have dropped a biological weapon on Mars that wiped out all the people, but it didn't wipe out the animals on Mars? And the animals may have then re-evolved over millions of years, and we ended up with intelligent sort of apes, like on Planet of the Apes. Is that possible? Pure speculation on my part. Don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, see what you think. So there we are. You can see the eyes, you can see the snout, you can see the mouth. There we are. I mean, I'm not going to sharpen it anymore. It's pretty obvious what it is. Now, one thing that makes this rather odd, and unlike gorillas and apes and chimpanzees that we have on Earth, primates on Earth, is that the brow ridge is not very pronounced. Now, I would expect if this was a gorilla or a chimpanzee, this would stick right out. Okay? Let me show you a quick image I've got up here. Look at the brow ridges. This is from Planet of the Apes. Great. I thought it was quite a good film, actually. I prefer the older ones, but, you know, that's me. I'm an old guy. I prefer the 1970s films. But they're nicely done, but I don't think the storylines are as good as the old ones. But some of you older folks out there who watch this channel will remember the original Planet of the Apes films, and they were really good. And in their day, they were considered really well done. The costumes and the stuff, really good, and the story was great. But what if something like that happened on Mars? Now, the original story of Planet of the Apes. Look at the brow ridge here, very pronounced. We're not seeing that on this potential specimen on Mars. We're not seeing that heavy brow ridge. But there are similarities, and the snout's very similar. Not the same. I've been trying to find one to match it. I can't, because obviously we don't have the same species here. But it's kind of like a cross between a humanoid, a gorilla, and a sort of bonobo, and one or two other species. It doesn't really conform to any of them exactly. It's kind of in between. But that's what you would expect on another planet. You wouldn't expect all the species to look exactly the same as ours. There would be similarities, of course, but they wouldn't be the same. Look at the heavy brow ridge there. Look at that. It kind of curves round, and the eyes are very sort of set back behind the brow ridges. You can really see it on that one there, but we're not seeing that in this one. And if you go to some of my previous videos, this is a video I uploaded recently, pyramid stone and lizard found on Mars. But in that video there's also this. This is an ape of some sort. Mummified as well. It's still got lips and teeth. It's not very clear. This is much further away in a poor quality image, and is much smaller. This is a much smaller ape. It's not sort of gorilla size like we have today. And in fact, if you go through my video playlist on my channel, there's one called Mars, Planet of the Apes, Primates. Check it out. It's got the gorilla. There's that one I just showed you. There's what looks like an orangutan. There's chimpanzee types, but they're not the same as ours. There's even one that looks a bit like Sasquatch or a Wookiee from Star Wars. Some of them actually look like Ewoks or like small little ape-like, bear-like things, which are very odd indeed. In fact, I've got one right here. I'll show you now. So that brow ridge, as I said, That brow ridge is not very pronounced. If that was a gorilla, an earth gorilla, this would be sticking right out like that. But it's not. Now, that's very different. So this may not even be an ape. This may be some kind of in-between species. It may be sort of a proto-human ape-like or something else. So please comment below. Let me know what you think this might be. But you can see that bright thing there? There's a bright thing just there, like an earring. Very interesting. So, and wild apes don't wear earrings, do they? So there's something really amazing going on here. Is it possible that the ape-like creatures took over this part of Mars after the war or catastrophe? Perhaps the humans and people were wiped out by some sort of biological weapon, and they may have taken over. Who knows? This is one I found very recently, 6th of October, so this was only about a week ago, just over a week ago. So this is what looks similar to an Ewok. Very small nose. You've got these jagged teeth here. A couple of canine teeth, it looks like. Very interesting, but not in great shape, and the eye socket on the left is unclear because of the way the shadow's kind of hitting it. It's a bit odd. So that was weird. So there it is. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon.